Hi everyone and welcome back to my podcast, Life of an Artrepreneur. Thank you so much for all of the amazing feedback from episode 1. I feel a bit shocked with the reaction, to be honest. I'm like, oh my god, it's actually done really quite well. So thank you for listening. For episode 2, I've been kind of umming and ahhing over what I should talk about. Obviously, I've got so many ideas. I've literally got a list of things that I want to get through. But I thought for episode 2, I would talk about what it's actually like to be a self-employed artist that works full-time. Because again, obviously you only see what you see on social media. You don't necessarily see all of the behind the scenes and the background of that and all the work that goes into that. So this is one of the reasons why I actually wanted to start this podcast, to kind of talk about more of those things that you don't necessarily get to see all the time. So I'm a full-time coloured pencil artist specialising in realistic drawings of wildlife and pet portraits, and I've kind of dabbled in illustration and I teach a lot online. I'm currently planning my next in-person workshop, which will be way more people than previously, so that's a bit scary, but it'll be fine. But yeah, so that's basically what I do, and then obviously you've got all of the behind the scenes of that keeps the business running basically. So I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit of that as well, and just what it's like day to day, and to talk about my sort of routine, whether that be daily, weekly, monthly. I think it's so important as well to kind of review everything that you're doing in your business, all your different income streams, every sort of like few months, or kind of 6 months to a year definitely. I always have a look sort of 6 months more in depth, and then a year I'll kind of write out all my goals again for the following year. And I always just try and make the following year a lot better than the previous year, whether that be, you know, more competitions, more opportunities, starting something new like this podcast. This was on my goal for this year, to start a podcast. So yeah, I'd probably start there. If you're thinking about starting something new or cutting down on something, just have a review of like everything as a whole and kind of compare one thing to another, see how well it's doing in terms of like your income stream, whether it's growing or whether it's kind of not really moving, and consider how much time you're spending on each aspect as well, because if you can cut something else down, you can probably start something different that will bring you in a better kind of income stream. So it's all about kind of comparing one thing to another and just keep reviewing everything that you're doing in your business. So probably one of the main things that I'm going to talk about is motivation and being disciplined, because if you work for yourself, there is no one to hold you accountable for anything that you're doing. It definitely helps if your business is obviously something that you absolutely love, because then it's still work, but you enjoy it that much that you want to do it all the time as well. However, I definitely have days where I just think I can't be bothered at all to draw today. I've got no motivation to draw. Sometimes your wrist starts hurting if you've been drawing for a while. So I think it's firstly important to organise yourself and plan everything out as much as you can. I'm someone that writes down a million to-do lists. I've got like my weekly planner, where I kind of break everything down into tasks for each day. And I try and stick to that as much as I can, really, because if you don't really have much structure in your day. And when you're working for yourself, you definitely need that structure, because no one's going to tell you what to do and what not to do. Like, you're in control of everything. So I definitely say kind of motivation just comes and goes. You can't rely on being motivated to get the work done. You have to be super disciplined, like next level disciplined, to get work done and just stick by a schedule. I always think it's good to work towards deadlines as well. So if you're a pet portrait artist, or, you know, you're doing a collection of work for an exhibition or something like that, I find it easier to work towards a deadline, because you think, right, I have to get everything done by this date, so you can plan everything else around it and make sure you get everything done for that date. So yeah, that's the first thing I'd say. Be incredibly disciplined and don't rely on motivation to kind of get up in the morning and do what you need to do. Sometimes if you're not in the mood to do it, you've just got to do it anyway, or else it literally won't get done. So yeah, kind of be as disciplined as you can and just have that work ethic. And like I said, it does help if you're doing something that you absolutely love and enjoy so much. A lot of my members on Patreon are not full-time artists, or they're part-time and they want to go full-time. And I think it's just so nice to see how people love drawing and arty things, because it's just like relaxing. People do it as a hobby like so much. But to make that into a career, you're kind of flipping it and you've got to be doing it all the time. But then at the same time, it's like, then you're kind of doing what you love all the time. So it swings and roundabouts, but definitely say you need to kind of live and breathe whatever you're doing business-wise if you want it to really grow. As with my previous episode, I have written down some notes, otherwise I would be going off on loads of different tangents, so I'm going to try and stick to them. So the next thing I've written is about how you're responsible for everything, especially initially. I think when you get to a point where you have grown your business quite a lot, so there are certain websites that you can use to kind of delegate tasks if you are just feeling so overwhelmed with doing everything yourself. I think I'm kind of edging into that phase now where my head's about to explode every single day. So I need to kind of give other people them tasks to do and kind of stop being such a control freak and try and give the responsibility a little bit to someone else and take some of that weight off my shoulders, because it's a lot when you're doing it all the time. So there are some websites to do that. There's Fiverr, which is basically a website that hires freelancers and you kind of send them what you want them to do, whether it just be like little editing bits or, you know, updating all your thumbnails on YouTube, completely revamping your website, or, you know, getting a different logo, changing bits of your branding, like loads of little creative things like that. Then there's Fiverr, and I think the other one is called Penji. I know Shannon Mullen, my other artist friend, she mentioned it in her amazing video that she did about branding on YouTube the other week. I'm definitely a bit of a control freak, not necessarily control freak, more of like a perfectionist. I think it would be easier to kind of clone myself so I could get everything done how I want it to be done. But then at the same time, sometimes it's nice to have a bit of creativity from someone else and other ideas suggested that you might not have even thought of. So yeah, if you are self-employed or you're thinking about being self-employed and there's a lot going on, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders, then those two websites, Fiverr and Penji, are both really good. I've not actually used them yet, but I've heard a lot about them, and I think, you know, in the next few months I'll kind of have to delve into that sort of space. I think another thing to remember is that, you know, everything takes a lot longer than you probably initially think. So try and give yourself a bit longer in the day. And also don't kind of put pressure on yourself. I always put too much on my to-do list, and then like some of the tasks kind of fall onto the next day and the next day and the next day. And then by the weekend, I'm like, I've still got like a week's worth of work to do within the weekend. But then it's also about that kind of balance as well, because you can't work all the time because it's not healthy. I think in terms of your time when you're self-employed, you do have that flexibility, which I guess is good because you can make time, you know, if you want to see your friends on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever in a couple of weeks, you can do that. You can kind of work around that. But I'd say your time is a lot more limited. And I don't know about anyone else, but if I kind of go to the gym, which I need to do a lot more often, I don't know, kind of certain things I just feel guilty that I'm not working. And like, I think I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm not one of them people that can just like sit and watch telly for hours. Like I need to be like on my iPad doing something, or else I'm not making the most use of my time, if that makes sense. So your time kind of is flexible. You can do more of what you want to do ish, but then you don't kind of have as much time. But then I guess it depends on what you're doing as well. I'm obviously giving you my advice from being a full-time pet portrait and wildlife artist, but I guess if people are doing different things, then, you know, they might have more time. It depends what they're doing. So that brings me on to, you know, how you work quite a lot on your own, especially being, you know, a pet portrait and wildlife artist and art tutor that's majority online teaching. You do work a lot on your own, and I love working on my own because no one's telling me what to do. And yeah, I just like it. I concentrate more. I get fully like focused on what I'm doing. No one's kind of distracting me or impacting my decision making too much. You're basically your own boss, so you can do what you want to do. But even though you do work a lot on your own, it's still so important to make time for yourself. Like I said about going to the gym, going for walks, still go and see your friends, family, you know, because it's very easy to get sucked into like an unhealthy work habit of just working constantly. So having that kind of balance is obviously really good. And to keep that balance, I just try and stay as organised and as planned out as I can. Literally breaking my months down into weeks, and then the weeks in my weekly planner into days. Per month, I probably do around 5 to 7 commissions, depending on the size though, because obviously I work either really small or really, really big. And obviously there's quite a difference in terms of how long that takes me to do. But on average, I'd probably say about 5 to 7. In terms of Patreon, I do 2 focus tutorials, which are often an hour and a half to 2 hours long. I do a full in-depth tutorial, so a start to finish full portrait of a wildlife animal or whatever it is that they want to draw. And that can often be split into maybe 3 to 10 parts, depending on what we're drawing and how big it is. So obviously Patreon takes up a lot of my time, probably more than commissions these days. I record the tutorials and I've got to edit them. I also do the critiques, which I think I mentioned in the previous episode. So I give like more one-to-one feedback to some people as well, which again takes time, but I love doing it and I love seeing like people improve and develop from my like advice and guidance. I think that's really rewarding. So that kind of leads me on to admin and how long that takes. And it's a huge part of what you do, because, you know, replying to opportunities or people that have emailed you, commission inquiries, people that want feedback that's like really quite in depth. I want my patrons to feel like I've spent time really looking at the work and really trying to help them improve and giving them like valuable advice that they can then apply to other drawings as well. I don't want to ever kind of make them feel like I've skimmed through everything. So even if it takes me a few days longer to reply, I'd rather do that than kind of rush through everything. I think the more following you have and the more you kind of grow, the more your admin becomes a bigger job. And especially sort of this year and the back end of last year, I've definitely realised that. And it's not my favourite thing to do, but you've just got to do it. Another thing I'd say, if you're self-employed or if you're thinking about being self-employed, like as an artist, you're probably someone who has so many different ideas flying around your head and you can't explore all of them. I'm definitely one of them people, so I write everything down, but a lot of them don't really make it past that. But I think it's important not to spread yourself too thin at the same time. It took me a while to kind of, because I was going to start this podcast at the start of the year, like the very start of the year. But then I didn't really want to rush it. I'd not yet bought a microphone and I could have kind of rushed into it, got just any microphone, just written out a few notes and just gone for it. It probably would have been fine, but I just wanted to make it really thorough and make sure I'd prepared enough beforehand before just jumping straight in. And I also wanted to kind of shuffle everything around a little bit in terms of my work so I could make time for this and not feel like I'm rushing through it, because again, it's difficult because you want to do everything, like Patreon, commissions, your own original pieces, exhibitions, making time to apply to competitions, doing all your admin, your feedback, doing all your online orders, packaging. That takes a long time. Writing up all the notes for this podcast, recording the podcast, editing, absolutely everything. It's a lot. So I thought, can I actually, squeeze a podcast into my weekly work life? And I'm glad that I have, because honestly the feedback from the first one was just so lovely to hear, and all positive, so thanks. And even more people were saying about my voice. I just find it hilarious about my voice. I think it's this microphone, because my friends were like, you don't really sound like that in real life. So I blame it on the microphone for making my voice sound very soothing and calming, which is what a lot of people have been saying. So in the previous episode, I think I touched on this as well, but meeting up with other artists and chatting to people online that are in your sort of line of work or somewhere that you want to be, or you've got them kind of similar interests or you're doing sort of similar things, I think that is so important to, again, you can kind of bounce ideas off each other. A lot of pet portrait artists have like frequent meetups, and if you get chatting to someone, you can go for a walk with them if they live in your area and talk about your work, because not everyone in your sort of friendship group will be doing anything similar to what you're doing. But I think it's kind of good to bounce ideas off someone who's doing something similar, and you can kind of compare notes and see what's working and see what's not working, really. So yeah, definitely chat to other artists online. Social media is just obviously the best place to do that, and just stay as social as you can in this very solo sort of job. Routine is absolutely key. So you need to have like structure and a daily routine and daily habits sorted, or else you're going to be all over the place. And especially if you're someone who's transitioning from working for someone else to then working for yourself, I think that is a big jump, because like I said, you're responsible for everything. So I could get up at like 11 o'clock in the morning if I wanted to, but that's not helping me. That's not helping no one. No one's holding me accountable for that. But I still get up early. I still plan out my week. I structure everything as much as I can. And I do have them days where I can't really be bothered to draw. I can't really get in that sort of flow state. So those times I kind of do other little bits, and then I'm like, right, I need to have a block of drawing this afternoon. Where I need to film something, or I need to work on a commission for a little bit because it needs to be done by a certain date, and then I'll just put a podcast on and just kind of get into that drawing zone. Definitely podcasts for me are what helps me to do that. But yeah, sticking to a really good routine that works for you. I know some people go to the gym in the morning first, they go for a walk and they start a bit later. Some people work better late at night. I think I'm definitely one of them people actually that works better at night. I don't know why. I think it's because in my head it's like a countdown until I'm going to sleep. So I'm like, right, I need to get as much done before I go to sleep as possible. I don't know, I'm just such a weirdo like that, I think. But yeah, routine and habits and everything like that is so important if you're self-employed. Also remember to give a bit of time for those unexpected things that will kind of come up. So be prepared for that. You do need to kind of prioritize different parts of your work at different times, and you're the one that kind of makes those decisions. So yeah, they're all of my notes that I've written down pretty much. I don't know if that was in any kind of decent order. I feel like I was going from one point to another to another to another, but there we go. I wrote up them notes when I was on the plane back from Alicante yesterday. I've just been to Alicante for 3 nights, 4 days, but we got there late on the first day and we left early on the last day. So we had like 2 full days. But yeah, I just went with my parents for a few days and just had a bit of a relaxing time for a little bit, which was nice. I always find, this is another thing, if you're on a train or a plane, any kind of travel, I always find is a good way for me to brainstorm. I always put loads of things in my notes, whether that be like the business tips blogs that I do for Patreon, or like writing up these notes that I wrote on the plane coming back. Any feedback for people, like I don't know what it is, but traveling, because I think, well, I'm just sat here, I might as well make use of my time. So I hope you've enjoyed episode 2. This one's a little bit shorter than the first one. I'm really excited for the next one, where I'm going to be talking about realistic art versus conceptual art, which I think is just a huge topic. And a lot of you resonated with my experience at uni that I spoke about in the previous episode, and how it was so conceptual and realistic art wasn't really supported or liked very much. So I want to kind of talk about that and my whole experience with like galleries and different competitions I've applied to and where I've got with those, and just along with what I've experienced as like a realistic artist so far, and yeah, just my kind of opinion on it all and how I found it all throughout uni up till now. So that's going to be a really good episode for next week. So thank you for watching. I've also figured out that you can leave a 5-star review on Spotify. So if you want to do that, then I'll be really grateful if you could. If you're watching on YouTube, then hopefully this is a much better angle than the previous week. Honestly, I literally watched it back and I thought, what on earth is that? But obviously I couldn't change it because it was already filmed. So yeah, I've set it up better this week. So thanks if you watched on YouTube, and thank you for everyone that has listened so far. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I'll be back next week where we'll be talking about realistic art versus conceptual art. And thank you so much for listening, and hope you all have a great rest of the week.